everyone, this is Bob Martin with the Nautilus Drydocks, and this is Chapter 3, the build log for this 1/77 scale Disney Nautilus model, available from the Nautilus Drydocks at www.nautilusdrydocks.com. This chapter is going to focus on the cosmetic aspects of this boat. As you've seen in the previous chapters, we've gone through some of the functionality in getting this prepped for RC operation. This is going to be the display aspect of it, the priming, the painting, and the weathering of the model as I do it. Certainly no right and wrong, and you're free to experiment as you'd like, but hopefully this helps you in your journey converting this to RC operation. So without any further delay, let's get started. At this point, what I would actually like to do is dress up the interior a little bit because we're going to button up the model to work on the exterior. And to that point, all I want to do really is hit the interior of the boat with some nice thick flat black paint. You can paint it obviously any color that you'd like. And that's just going to clean things up on the inside there before we get any linkages or anything like that installed. So I'm going to hit that with some paint and we'll see what it looks like afterwards. Okay, you can see the inside of the hull now looks a lot cleaner. This paint is still drying a little bit, so it looks a little splotchy, but certainly a lot cleaner. What I'm going to move on to now is priming the exterior of the hull. Now, you can utilize a lot of high quality, two-part epoxy paints, and certainly recommend that if you feel comfortable with it, but it works perfectly well to use paints just right from your local hardware store. I've had great luck with it. I really like the Rust-Oleum line of products. I'm going to use this dark gray automobile primer to prime the exterior of the hull. Before we do that, you're going to want to make sure all of the tape that you put on the wheelhouse here is pressed down on the edges so you don't get any bleed underneath. The one thing I'm going to do before we get to that, I'm just going to put a little piece of tape over these LED lights so we don't get any on there. And we'll get some primer on it, and that will allow not only superior paint adhesion later on, but before we get to painting, we'll see if there's any areas that need to be addressed in terms of finish. Alright, here we can see the results of application of the primer. Everything looks really good. I actually can't see any areas that are going to need to be addressed. Everything looks nice and tight around these areas here. So now that we've got a good surface to adhere the paint to, we're going to put a base coat on. I have elected, again, going for the home improvement route to go with this Rust-Oleum dark silver paint. And this looks really great, actually. This is called dark steel. And once it is covered, the large metal flakes actually reflect the light really neat, and it has a really neat finish to it once it's all finished and weathered and rusted. So this is what I'm going to use for this particular model. Again, if you don't like it, experiment. Some people really like that dark orange, brown look to the model. This will get there because we're going to put rust on top, but experiment. It's your model. There's no right or wrong, but this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to throw some silver base coat on there and we'll go to the next step. Alright, here we have the model finished in its base coat of dark steel color. Now what we're going to do is going to highlight all of the panel lines utilizing an airbrush. Now this is, again, not a necessary step, but I find it adds a lot more depth to the paint job, and so this is something that I like to do. And in order to do that, I'm going to break out my dual action airbrush here. Dual action because I can control the air and the flow of paint utilizing this trigger. This was a really cheap airbrush. This is about 20 bucks from Caswell Plating. They got a limited supply of these if you're interested in playing around with airbrushes. The paint that I've decided to use is a mix of Humbrol and Model Master. This is a Humbrol 234, kind of a dark gray color, and this is interior black. And what it ends up with is just kind of a taupey gray color. And you don't want a massive amount of contrast, so that's why we're going to go with this dark gray color. So I'm going to start airbrushing in on the details here. I'll show you how that's done. Alright, in order to do this, what we're going to do is we're just going to follow all of the creases and rivet lines, and we're going to use a light dusting of the paint we just mixed up. So that's what we're going to end up with. I'm just going to continue on with this around the whole model. Alright, here is the results of our labors. It's nice and subtle, more a difference in sheen than too much more. Next step is going to really be the magic, and that is the application of this Modern Masters oxidizing rust paint, and that's what's going to put the real rust finish on this boat and really make it look realistic. So what we're going to do is get our concentration of this all mixed up, and what you're going to need is the iron paint and some vinegar. So this is how that paint comes out. It's like a paste, like toothpaste almost, and what we're going to do now is mix in some vinegar with that. Start out with approximately 50-50 ratio and adjust it from there. Alright, I've mixed up my solution of rust paint, and this is going to be kind of the viscosity that you're going to want to go for there. It should go on see-through, but you should still have a layer on there. We're going to want to go from the top down when we paint this out, and you just slosh it all over the entire model. It's a wash more than a paint. So that's what I'm going to work at the next few minutes. I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. Alright, this model is completely washed in our rust solution. This is after only, I'd say, 3 or 4 minutes, but you can already see the oxidizing effect in the hull there, starting to turn, you know, gold and rust. And that's only going to get more pronounced as the model dries. So we're going to leave this thing to dry here for a few hours, and then we're going to move on to the next step. Alright, you can see that the rust has cured fully. Everything is dry. The next step is going to be to wipe the model, moving in a direction from top to bottom in a vertical line to remove any areas of excess rust and create some really neat streaking effects. And so we're just going to use this rag and wipe again from top to bottom, especially, you know, particularly in areas where the rust is a little bit thicker than in the other areas. So go over the entire model with your rag, and then we'll be ready for the next step. Okay, the excess rust has been removed from the model, and now what we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit of semi-gloss clear, and we're just going to use a light mist. We're not going to soak the model at all, and this is just going to help lock that in, and it's also going to downplay the rust finish in the model as well. So just a light misting on top of the model, and that'll lock everything in. Okay, what we are going to work on now is adding a little bit of weathering to the scupper area, and I'm just going to use some of these crushed pastel powders that I got, these weathering powders. I've got some white, I got a little bit of green in here. What you're going to want to have is sort of a medium brush, and I find this works really, really well just for some subtle weathering. I'm just going to take a little bit of the white and a little bit of the green. I'm going to mix it up. More white than green, absolutely. And then what we're going to do is at the corners, we're just going to lightly streak in a downward direction from those scuppers, just to create some subtle streaking. And with weathering, less is definitely more. So you're gonna wipe this out, and again, just draw it down. Nice long streaks originating from those scuppers. And we're gonna go about that for all of them. All right, I've added the that subtle streaking and weathering coming from the scuppers there. If you get too much on there, if you just soak, your brush in a little bit of water and scrub it in and draw it down, you can really tone down that look. Bear in mind too that if you do choose to seal that with another coat of clear coat, it's really going to wash out that color. I find I don't need it. Once that's kind of in there and ingrained, that streaking stays in place quite well, but that's certainly up to you. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to pick off the masking that we put in place. Free up our floodlights and our main salon windows. Now you may find that some of the rust, because it's such a watery solution, got in around the edges. This actually looks pretty good. And if that's the case, just take a Q-tip with a little bit of vinegar or even water and just kind of scrub along the outside, and that will clean it right up for you. So let's remove that masking then, and we'll move on. Alright, we're going to keep on going here. There's not a lot more painting to do. I'm going to take a little bit of this grimy black color, and I'm going to hit the breathers and just add a little bit more definition to the venting portion underneath the hatch covers there. So let's continue that along all 5 of those breathers. Alright, something else that I kind of like to do is just a little bit of dry brushing along the upper hull details here. Technique for that is all over YouTube, but basically you load up your paintbrush with just a little bit of paint. You wipe it off on a rag until there's almost nothing coming off of it, and then you just lightly drag it over the details that you're trying to highlight. And what happens is the paint only comes off on the raised detail areas, and it just kind of makes them pop, especially with the silver. Reflects the light really, really well. Certainly not a necessary step, but it does add just a little bit more detail for your eyes to latch onto on the model. Alright guys, at this point your model is cosmetically just about 100%. So that'll conclude this chapter of the build-up process. I really hope that you enjoyed it. Next step is going to be addressing the running gear of the boat, getting the watertight cylinder set up, installed, all the linkages run. So I hope you'll join me for that chapter coming up very soon. Thanks for joining me. We'll catch you next time.